Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week, joining us from the Netherlands is Nancy Beers. Hi, Nancy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Vasco. It's an honor, especially since I've been listening for years already. So it's very cool to be your guest now.
Yes. Awesome. And I'm very happy to have you here. So Nancy says she is here to change the world one game at a time. She plays with people to learn and unlearn things. This can be either hard skills or soft skills like human skills. And I'm sure many other aspects, like, for example, opening up conversations. We'll probably talk about that a lot today. And before we go into all of that, I do want to hear a little bit more about you, Nancy. So take a minute, tell us a little bit more about you. And how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Well, it started out when I was 13, I guess, when I got a computer with Linux on it. And that is where my open source hippie heart opened up. So throughout all of my career, I've been working a lot with open source software in all different ways, kinds, and shapes and forms. And as a lot of other Scrum Masters, I started out as a project manager. Of course, like you say, I'm recovering. I'm also still recovering, Vasco. But I've been in IT for ages. I also studied business informatics and conservatory. So I'm a musical nerd, or a nerd that does music as well. In 2013, I worked at a big company, and there I had the opportunity to become a product owner. There was a course taught by Julia van Berkel and James Copeland, and I was like, this sounds interesting, this whole agile thingy. So I went in because I thought it was logical for a project manager to become a product owner. And along the way, I figured out that maybe the Scrum Master role was even a better fit. So I followed that up with the Scrum Master course, of course. And when I did that course, I was like, but this is actually how open source software works, right? It's about intrinsic motivation. It's about getting together as a team. It's about creating value. So we're building what we actually need and use, instead of making a great plan and then functional design and a technical design and do it. And then just after 1.5 years, discovered that this is not what we needed. So to me, it felt very natural. It was like, oh, but this is actually very logical if you look at it from an open source perspective, how to develop software or how to develop any product in that case. So I've been switching between product owner and Scrum Master for a while. And eventually I found out that the Scrum Master role fit me best, because it's between the edge of being working with humans and working with technique. And I really like that place to be. And also because I go to hacker festivals and all kinds of stuff. And to me, Scrum Master role is closest to being a social engineer. So basically, you're hacking systems, you're hacking processes, you're hacking humans, maybe even. That's just very natural to do for me.
Definitely hacking human systems is one of the key aspects of the role of Scrum Master, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
and the ability to see those systems is also a very important skill to have, because very often everybody has some kind of, I would call it intuition to what's going on between humans. I mean, we are humans after all, and unless we suffer from a specific psychological condition, we will be able to see what's going on. But to be a Scrum Master, you really need to be attuned to that very much and understand that systems are created by, policies, rules, people's relationships, people's moods, so the structure, the processes, all of that, right? And perhaps we dive into that with the next question, which is, of course, Nancy, tell us a story of failure. And I do understand that sometimes people kind of shriek at the word failure, but when we are, as we were just talking about, working with human systems, failure is one of the basic aspects of our work. Of course, we try to make the failure as small and as least impactful as we can, but failure is part of what we do because we work with humans. So tell us that story, Nancy, and walk us through the details on how that story developed, where you started, what was the context, and what were the things that were happening. Tell us that story.
This story is about one of the three pillars, which is transparency, which I highly regard as one of the most important pillars, which is not possible because they're always important. But there is a very thin line between being as transparent as possible and typical Dutch bluntness. It's a thin line, and I've learned that the hard way by failing a lot in that department, because there's this other thing called politics within, especially larger companies, where if you use 100% transparency too much, you might end up not achieving what you want to achieve.
All right. So tell us an example. How did that go down?
What happened was there was this engineering lead within a big company where I used to work, and there was this big impediment for my team which couldn't be solved by the team itself, and it took me a lot of time to manage that impediment. So when I got really, really fed up with it, I was like, okay, I'm going to bring my impediment radar. I use visualizations a lot. Impediment radar to the sprint review. And I will tell all the stakeholders there that this impediment hadn't been removed because someone forgot to take action, or at least someone wasn't willing to take action, which was the engineering lead. So I sit there as Scrum Master, yay, I have this impediment, and it's somehow I just can't. Maybe you can help me as stakeholders to improve this or to remove this for my team, for me and my team, because this guy isn't fixing it. And that was a bit too much transparency for his taste, since my contract didn't get extended. So sometimes there you might have to try some more diplomacy in pointing out impediments. So transparency is good, is needed to solve big problems, but sometimes just calling out the elephant in the room as bluntly as I did can cost you your head.
This reminds me of a pattern, which is, or an anti-pattern for Scrum Masters, which is the martyr, right? Like somebody who throws themselves on top of the grenade to save the team. And the sometimes it works, and that's a tool we have in our toolbox to be a martyr, but it's definitely not always a good thing to do. Sometimes it's the necessary thing to do. But the point that I was trying to make is that sometimes by throwing ourselves on top of the grenade, we die, but we leave a lot of other problems behind, right? Like in that case, your contract didn't get extended, you moved on, you worked in another company, but something else happened. And that's one of the things that, maybe it's one of the takeaways I would like to point out here, is that we need to be mindful that even though we can be blunt, and that's a tool we have, and as you said, sometimes even a little bit too much, and sometimes being too blunt is necessary, but we need to be mindful of the environment we leave behind, right? Because now that manager might have had... might have felt so bad about it that he wanted to take it out on the team. And some people are like that. Like, we can't predict what others will do once we trigger something, right? Like in this case, you trigger the reaction. Hopefully it was just your contract not being extended and the other stakeholders waking up to the problem, right? Because that could have been a positive impact. But for me, I think that's one of the key takeaways from this story, is that we need to be mindful that even when we take radical action, sometimes radical action may ease our conscience, but leave things worse for the team. How about you, Nancy?
He did call me back though a year later because he said, I need you because you are so very transparent. So I think I left something good in that situation, in hindsight, because he was like, you always are so clear on addressing problems or addressing pain points. So I guess it did do something good for him. But at that point, it wasn't the best decision to make. No. But on the other hand, it's also staying close to myself and staying honest to myself. So, like I said, it's a thin line between transparency and bluntness, right? And it's always figuring out. You are working with human beings and not with monkeys, so you have to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And you should fail, and as long as you learn something from it. Is it failure? I don't know.
Absolutely. That's very well said. Thank you very much for sharing that story, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.